On a broadcast tonight, the UN Sanctions Committee on North Korea convenes an emergency meeting and calls Pyongyang's latest missile launch a clear violation of existing resolutions. The initial results of the drone investigation are out. Seoul's defense ministry confirms that all signs point to Pyongyang as the culprit behind the recent infiltration of the drones. Plus, Russia threatens to cut off gas to Ukraine unless the country pays in advance for all its supplies. The U.S. says the move is a ploy by Moscow to control Ukraine. These stories and more next on Primetime News. Good evening to our viewers in Korea, and hello to those of you who are watching from around the world. It's Friday, April 11th here in Seoul. I'm Yoo Ji-hye.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thank you so much for joining us. We begin with an emergency meeting held by UN Sanctions Committee in Washington on North Korea's latest provocations.
At the session, the international community discussed the regime's missile launches and ways to curb further provocations on the Korean peninsula. Our Shin Se-min reports.
A clear violation of UN resolutions. That was the conclusion that the UN's North Korea Sanctions Committee came to during an emergency meeting on Thursday local time. The meeting was a first since Pyongyang launched 2 mid-range ballistic missiles late last month, and UN sources say the panel agreed to come up with countermeasures to deal with the threat. As for when, the sources say the committee will wait until May to hold further talks after a report from a North Korean specialist is finalized. To no one's surprise, South Korea, the U.S., Britain, and France supported the statement, while China and Russia were more cautious, saying the wider issue of securing peace and stability on the Korean peninsula was a most pressing concern. A day before the committee meeting, South Korean Defense Minister Kim Kwan-jin received a phone call from his U.S. counterpart Chuck Hagel, with both agreeing to work hand-in-hand to counter threats posed by Pyongyang. During their 20-minute phone conversation, the two agreed that Pyongyang's missile and nuclear weapons pose a grave challenge to the Korean peninsula and international community. Hagel also informed Kim of Washington's plan to dispatch 2 additional Aegis-equipped destroyers to Japan by 2017 to counter the North Korea threat. Also on Thursday, a former U.S. non-proliferation official said the international community should step up its efforts for targeted sanctions on the North Korean leadership. Speaking at a forum hosted by the 38 North website, Joseph de Thomas said it was important to find mechanisms that go after the North Korean regime and not its people. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, meanwhile, Pyongyang has warned Washington of strong countermeasures if it maintains its so-called hostile North Korea policies, which some see as a threat of a 4th nuclear test.
North Korea's National Defense Commission said Friday that the United States, along with the international community, has been critical of Pyongyang's rocket launches, but has not raised issue with South Korea's ballistic missile launches last month. The communist state called this part of Washington's two-sided nature and added it must withdraw all sanctions on Pyongyang. Experts say the strong countermeasures Pyongyang is referring to could be additional missile launches or a 4th nuclear test. Moving now to the release of the interim results of the drone investigation, the South Korean government strongly believes the 3 drones recently found in different parts of the South came from North Korea.
To confirm and reinforce their findings, the probe is now in the hands of a team of GPS experts. Our Choi Sun has the details.
The investigative team has found a sizable amount of circumstantial evidence from the aerial vehicle's characteristics and loaded equipment that confirms the drones were sent by North Korea.
On Friday, the South Korean government revealed what it knows so far about the 3 unmanned aerial vehicles found crashed in Paju, north of Seoul, on the western island of Baekneung-do and in Samcheok, Gangwon-do province. The Defense Ministry said identification information on the parts used inside the drone's engines, data transmitter receivers, and computer chips appear to have been intentionally damaged, another factor that points the finger at Pyongyang. And some of the drones carried a low-power analog video transmitter thought to have been incapable of sending photos or video back to the north. The other evidence that implicates the North are the color and shape of the fuselages. They were very similar to the ones seen during North Korean founder Kim Il-sung's birthday parade 2 years ago. Investigators, however, failed to decode the GPS coordinates for the drone's point of return as they were concerned about damaging the information stored inside the central processing unit. A separate team of civilian experts from the South and the United States will probe the GPS system.
The scientific investigative team will mobilize all efforts to find further evidence. This includes determining the drone's point of takeoff by analyzing the photos, the data stored in the central processing unit, as well as their travel routes.
If the final results confirm the drones to be from North Korea, Seoul says it will consider it a violation of the armistice agreement and take strong measures at the international level. 최유선, Arirang News.
From a series of missile launches, firing of artillery over the maritime border between the two Koreas, and strengthening of spy missions with drones, North Korea has clearly heightened provocations against the South in recent months.
So what's Kim Jong-un's message to the world, and how far is the North willing to go? For an expert's take, we bring in Dr. Dean Chang, Senior Research Fellow at the Washington-based Heritage Foundation. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Chang, what do you read into North Korea's recent provocations and intention of late?
I think North Korea is once again sending the signal that it will not be ignored. Kim Jong-un likes to have the spotlight, but it's also a signal to both South Korea and the United States of the dangers that North Korea can present if we don't pay sufficient attention to them.
So to what extent can North Korea carry out these provocations, and is there a possibility of a military conflict?
Well, North Korea, of course, has one of the largest militaries in the world, and the recent drone incidents show that it pays very little respect to things like sovereign airspace. The problem here is that given the large militaries on both sides of the DMZ, you're looking at the real possibility of escalation, especially if North Korea miscalculates as to what it thinks it can get away with.
Well, amid speculation that North Korea could carry out its fourth nuclear test, South Korea and its allies warned that it will face unimaginable consequences. Now, what are they referring to here, and how likely will we see another nuclear test?
I think we're actually quite likely to see another nuclear test for a couple of reasons. Nuclear tests in North Korea are done for two purposes. One is signaling and threatening, but the other aspect is, in a sense, proof of concept, to make sure the weapons actually work. We don't really have very good insight into North Korea for any given test, so it could be motivated by something that's not simply signaling.
So following the trilateral talks on North Korea's nuclear program, the United States, South Korea, Japan seem to be open to more flexibility when dealing with North Korea. The unification minister here said that they may be open to conditional releasing of some of the sanctions against North Korea. Why the move to more flexibility at this point in time?
Well, I think the offer of flexibility is the hope that perhaps we can get things off of dead center. But at the same time, I think that there is a consistent pattern here from all three countries saying, if you want to see flexibility, you, North Korea, also have to show us some flexibility, and you have to make some kind of concession. I think that there may be the expectation that we will all be disappointed in that regard.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Dean Chang, a Senior Research Fellow at the Washington-based Heritage Foundation. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you again for having me.
If everything goes according to plan, Korea will have a leaner fighting. The president
your gateway to the day's biggest stories in Korea and around the world. Breaking news, the hottest interviews, and a whole lot more. Join Arirang's Sean Lim and Yoo Ji-hye from the heart of Seoul. Primetime news, weeknights, live at 10 on Arirang TV.
Next general elections. With the country still reeling from its biggest ever data leak from 2 months ago, another data leak hits over 100,000 credit card customers. Our Hwang Jae has more on how the thieves got the data and how financial authorities have responded.
Yet another huge credit card company in Korea has failed to protect its clients' personal information. Financial sources said Friday that the data of some 35,000 Shinhan card customers has been leaked. The information includes credit card numbers and passwords for the company's loyalty cards. Since many clients use the same passwords for their credit and loyalty cards, this data breach has the potential to lead to mass credit card fraud. This latest discovery came as the Financial Supervisory Service looked into a recent case in which a gang hacked into a private server and stole information on credit card transactions. Aside from Shinhan, the personal information of more than 60,000 customers from companies like Kookmin and Nongyap was compromised. That takes the total number of people that had their information used by the ring to around 100,000. Local financial authorities on the same day opened a meeting where they ordered credit card firms to adopt integrated circuit or IC cards by the end of the year. IC cards are considered to be more secure than traditional magnetic stripe cards. Hwang Ji, Arirang News.
Samsung's latest smartphone model is out with new features and a lower price tag. The Korean tech giant is hoping the Galaxy S5 can put a little wind in the company's sales, which have dipped in recent months. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Samsung Electronics' Galaxy S5 debuted in 125 countries on Friday as a bigger, better, and faster version of its predecessor. The S5 features a 13cm screen with a fingerprint reader, 16-megapixel camera, and a battery that lasts 20% longer than the S4. The new phone is covered with a water-resistant coating that can withstand 30 minutes at the bottom of a pool a meter deep. Samsung is hoping the S5 can boost its lagging sales after 2 straight quarters of mediocre profits. Earlier this week, the company released a provisional report saying first quarter sales amounted to $50.2 billion, down nearly 11% from the previous quarter. To increase demand, Samsung has dropped the price of its S5 model with LTE capabilities to $838. That's $30 less than the S4's price tag when it was released last July. Samsung is spreading its focus to wearable devices, including the Gear 2 smartwatch, which uses the company's own Tizen operating system and is also available Friday. Speaking at the International World Wide Web Conference held in Seoul, Samsung Electronics Executive Vice President Choi Jong-duk held his wrist up high, boasting that the Tizen optimizes the benefits of an open-source web-centric platform while minimizing privacy concerns and security breaches. Choi says the company plans to find ways to expand the application of Tizen by opening a conference for the software platform in San Francisco this upcoming June. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
And over now to spreading outcry in the nation over a sentence handed down on a woman who beat her 8-year-old stepdaughter to death. Her ruling 10 years behind bars. And with the public regarding this as a light sentence, the case has sparked public outrage and prompted politicians to take extreme measures to tackle child abuse. Akani Lee has more.
It was in this home in Gyeongsangbuk-do province where an 8-year-old girl was fatally beaten to death by her stepmother. Punched and kicked repeatedly, the girl died from a ruptured intestine last August. Her stepmother, identified only by her surname Im, and her husband went on trial this Friday morning. And despite prosecutors asking for a 20-year jail sentence for the stepmother, she was sentenced to 10 years by the judge on Friday. The father in this case was given a 3-year term for negligence, despite prosecutors asking for 7 years of jail time. Officials say the stepmother not only beat her youngest stepdaughter to death, but also forced her older stepdaughter to testify that she killed her younger sister. Public outrage surrounding the case grew even more when a letter written by the victim's 12-year-old sister claimed the stepmother had put her inside a laundry machine and let it run. Meanwhile, on the heels of Friday's trial, the Ministry of Health and Welfare released data that shows 97 children died from parental abuse from 2001 to 2012. The report, however, also notes that the number of deaths is probably higher, as many cases go unreported. In light of this case and other high-profile child abuse cases in Korea, the government is also taking action, with policymakers and ruling party lawmakers looking for ways to put an end to child abuse. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
It's time for In the Press, where we look at some of the issues that have captured the attention of the domestic media this week.
From stories on Asia's skyscrapers to a new emerging trend in home appliances, we go over to our Leon for more. Leon, take it away.
Good evening and happy Friday. Lots of interesting stories in this week's papers. But first, let's start with Chosun Ilbo, which has an interesting feature story on Asia's skyscrapers. Now, the headline here reads, Asia changing the 21st century skyline. 9 out of top 10 skyscrapers in Asia. Now, the article says the buildings symbolize a country's national power, economic and technological competitiveness. And the photo right over here shows the top 15 tallest buildings in the world, just the top 6 here actually, and the Burj Khalifa in Dubai tops the list. Now, Korea didn't crack the top 15, but is expected to when the 555-meter tall Lotte World Tower seen over here goes up. It'll be the 7th tallest building in the world when it finishes construction in 2016. Now, moving on over to Donga Ilbo, and the title over here reads, Adults don't understand why we are always staring into our smartphones. Now, the paper notes the rising dependence on smartphones by students and that many of them are constantly connected to social networking sites via their smartphones, looking for consolation from the various stresses they face at home and at school. Now, whatever the reason, the fact remains that students are attached to their smartphones. The article shows a rise in the smartphone addiction rate over the past 3 years, which soared to 25% in 2013. That's nearly 3 times the rate for adults. Experts are saying the problem is taking a toll on relationships and that families need to work on communicating more. Now let's go on over to Jungang Ilbo, and the headline over here reads, Xi Jinping's Yaoqi politics, and $3.30 premier's meal that melted the hearts of 1.3 billion. Now, jiaoqi in Chinese means simple street food, and this feature story shines light on Chinese President Xi Jinping's rather ordinary menu choices when he travels across China. And the photo here shows that he would eat meals priced even as low as $1. And this, the article says, is part of an effort to earn the trust of the people, give them a sense of homogeneity, and ultimately remove the psychological gap between the Communist Party and the people. Now, finally, moving on to some business news from the Mail Business newspaper. The trend in home appliances is changing here in Korea. Now, the title of the article reads, White Home Appliances, Old Hat, Metallic Home Appliances, the new trend. The Daily takes newly released refrigerators as an example, and the circle graph over here shows that while only 24 of 92 models had a metallic design in 2012, 68 out of 87 did last year. Now, LG Electronics says the change is due to consumers who say the metallic design give products a more premium look. Now, with that, I'll wrap up your look at the stories in the Korean press for this week.
It's time to check on stories making headlines on the global front, from the deepening crisis in Ukraine to another major earthquake striking South America. We go live to our Paul Lee at the News Center.
Paul, let's start with Ukraine. It looks like Russian President Vladimir Putin is stirring up the pot once again.
That's right. This time, Putin is threatening to cut off gas deliveries to the country in a move that the U.S. is calling a tool of coercion. This as NATO says Russia has deployed tens of thousands of troops on the eastern Ukrainian border. Our Connie Kim reports.
The United States was quick to respond to Russian President Vladimir Putin's warning that Moscow may cut its gas supply to Ukraine. It has accused Russia of trying to take control of Ukraine using its natural resources as a leverage point.
We condemn Russia's efforts to use energy as a tool of coercion against Ukraine. Ukraine is now paying $485, a price clearly not set by market forces and well above the average price paid by EU members.
The State Department spokesperson also added that Washington is encouraging Ukraine and its western border allies to prepare to reverse natural gas flows in the pipeline so that Kyiv has access to additional gas supplies if needed. Putin's warning came after Kiev missed a deadline to pay its $2.2 billion gas debt. In a letter to 18 European countries, Putin said gas giant Gazprom will be compelled to require that Ukraine make upfront payments, and that if the back payments are not made, the gas tycoon could completely or partially cease gas deliveries as a last resort. Moscow's threat is worrying for European countries as pipelines transiting Kiev carry Russian gas to several European countries, including Germany, the largest Russian gas consumer. Meanwhile, NATO released satellite images of the eastern Ukrainian border in late March and early April. They showed that some 40,000 Russian troops were deployed along with warplanes and helicopters. An official from NATO says this is a capable force that is ready to quickly move into Ukraine with orders. The revelations of the pictures come before top diplomats from the U.S., Russia, and Europe are set to gather for a ministerial-level meeting for next week. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
And turning to the latest updates on the hunt for that missing Malaysian airliner. The visual search for debris over the southern Indian Ocean continued on Friday, as officials say they were confident of the approximate position of the black box recorders from Flight 370. At the same time, however, the chief search coordinator Angus Houston said the latest ping signal detected on Thursday was not related to the plane. As many as 15 aircraft and 13 ships were involved in Friday's search operation. Meanwhile, Malaysia's police chief Khalid Abu Bakar emphasized his team would be leading the investigation if and when the black box is found. And lastly, tragic news coming out of the U.S. state of California. A fatal crash between a FedEx truck and a bus carrying high school students has killed at least 10 people. California police said Thursday that the driver of the FedEx tractor trailer had lost control, crossing a divider on Interstate 5 before smashing head-on into the tour bus. The crash resulted in a fire which swept both vehicles in flames. The bus was carrying more than 45 students from Los Angeles and San Francisco who were heading to a university campus tour. Authorities say 5 students, 3 chaperones, and both drivers were killed. About 34 people have been reportedly rushed to nearby hospitals for treatment. That wraps up our look at international stories making headlines around the world. I'll see you back here next week.
Hello and welcome to Primetime Sports. I'm Stephen Che. The Masters opening round teed off and an unfamiliar name has risen to the top. Bill Haas leads the field early on after shooting a solid 4 under 68 going into round 2 at Augusta. Now Haas set the pace, shooting 6 birdies, offset by 2 bogeys, and it was good enough to hold off the top pros at bay for now. World number 2 and defending champion Adam Scott is fresh on his tracks at 3 under par, tied for second with Bubba Watson and Luis Oosthuizen. Meanwhile, Che Kyung-ju or KJ Choi leads his South Korean compatriots at 2 under, good for 5th place. And staying on the greens, round 2 of the KLPGA's Lotte Mart Open is in the books and Lee Min-young stands atop the leaderboard. Lee maintained her lead from round 1, improving to 11 under par going into the weekend down in Jeju Island. Meanwhile, An Shi-hyun sits at 2nd place with a score of 8 under par. The season opening tournament will wrap up on Sunday. And moving on, the latest World Curling Federation rankings are out and the South Korean ladies have broken into the world top 10. They jumped 2 spots into 9th place, effectively replacing Germany, which dropped 3 spots to 11th. The ladies' 4th place finish at the Worlds last month prompted the upgrade. Meanwhile, Canada made history, sweeping the top spots in the men's, women's, and wheelchair rankings. Now let's end with Friday's top KBO matchup. The league-leading SK Wyverns visited the Samsung Lions in Daegu. Now both pitchers hold their own, and this goes on until the 4th when SK's Park Jung-kwon comes in on a mishandled pitch. Na Ju-hwan comes in on the same at-bat. It's 2-0. Now into the bottom of the order. Samsung answers back after a small rally. It's tied 2-2, and in the 9th, SK scores the go-ahead run on a sac fly and goes on to win with a final score of 3-2. And looking elsewhere in the league, we have Lotte demolishing Kia 20-8. NC and LG are still going at it at the bottom of the 7th. NC's up 11-9. And finally, Nexen edges out Hanwha 7-6. And that's all I have for now. This has been Stephen Chen. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you later for more from the world of sports.
We've been lucky with great weather this week, and this weekend looks to be perfect for visiting the spring flower festivals or for other outdoor activities.
For more, let's turn things over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung, hello.
TGIF guys, this week we got a mix of chilly spring weather and early summer-like conditions. As for now, those down south will wrap up the week with showers as rain is forecast on Jeju later tonight, which will spread throughout the southern regions on Sunday. Taking a look at the current conditions, the nation is at the edge of a high pressure front from the East Sea, which is why we're seeing cloudy and foggy skies across the map. Tomorrow, about 5 to 20 millimeters of precipitation will fall on Jeju. This will hopefully take away some of the dry conditions. Dry weather advisories are still going on down south, so make sure to keep yourselves hydrated. Elsewhere in the nation, we'll get to enjoy warm spring weather, perfect for outdoor activities. Taking a look at Saturday's readings, Seoul, Daegu, and Gwangju make it to the low 20s, Busan peaks at 19. Other regions such as Jeju will get a mix of clouds and rain. Dokdo tops out at 14, while Mount Kumgang reaches 12. Well, that's all the updates I have for you this hour, but I'll be back with more after midnight.
Thanks, Bo-kyung. That's our broadcast on this Friday night, and that was my last broadcast on Arirang News for an assignment overseas. I just want to take this opportunity to thank our viewers for letting me into your living room every evening. It's been a great pleasure, honor, and an incredible journey over the past 8 years. You will always have a very special place in my heart, and I'm sure we'll cross paths in the near future. So till then, do take care.
And it was certainly a great privilege working with you on this desk for the past 2 years. We all wish you the very best in your future endeavor. Well, I'm Sean Lim. Have a great evening and a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you soon.